Joseph was a shepherd and a son to Jacob, hated amongst brothers and cherished by his father. I gave to him a vision of lordship, and his favor was marked by a coat of many colors. The son was betrayed for silver and was given over to the palace of another land. I blessed his labor and elevated his leadership. When he fled from evil, he once more was cast into bondage. But my favor did not leave him. Joseph interpreted the dreams of his captors, and he was forsaken. Joseph foretold feast and famine, and by my will it came to pass. And Joseph was once again elevated to a place of high power. When those who wronged Joseph came for help, he hid his identity, and they revered his power. He lorded over them, and shame was poured out upon their heads. They returned with the youngest of Jacob, and Joseph revealed himself to them. In his old age, Jacob blessed the sons of Joseph. Through this life, it was I, the God of Abraham and Isaac, who orchestrated the preservation of the line of Jacob and the life of Joseph.
Well, today our story of Joseph is going to wind down, and we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. This week, actually today, following our second gathering, Brenda and I will be leaving to head over to Kalispell. Somebody's getting married. Who is it again? Yeah, it's our daughter. So that'll be at the end of next week. So if you think of us today and in the days ahead, if you would just pray. We have people coming from Washington, Colorado, Wisconsin, Minnesota. I mean, they're coming from everywhere except Canada. And just pray for traveling mercies for the lot of us. That'd be fantastic. We're going to have fun as we celebrate Noel's wedding. How many of you dads thought you were too young for this to be happening? That had daughters, yeah? I'm alone? Thanks for nothing. I'm not calling you guys. No way. Yeah. But here we are. And then, of course, we continue to have the Middle East. And, you know, you've got what happened last night, and then you have political leaders who scramble and say this war is not ours and all that kind of stuff. Let me just tell you, Christianity knows where this earth is going to end. It is the Middle East. Everything that happens in the Middle East is more important than what happens in America, because that is the epicenter of all that God is doing. And so you can't turn a blind eye away from the Middle East and just hope things will go away. Regardless of which nation you live in, you need to know that the Middle East, that's the epicenter. And so what happens there will affect your life, and it'll affect my life. But thanks be to God, we are not in the dark. We are not in the dark. God continues to light the way for us. And I think today's message will actually speak to that, incidentally. So we will be primarily in Genesis chapter 48 today as we wind down the story of Joseph. By the time we get to chapter 48, of course, all of Joseph's family has now migrated from Israel down to Egypt because this famine is in the land. And Jacob, Joseph's dad, he ends his last 17 years or so of his life are spent in Egypt. Chapters 46 and 47 tell us about some of Jacob's life in this last stage of this last season of his life. And one of the things that he and Joseph agree on is that when Jacob dies, Joseph will take his body back to the promised land. He'll take it back to Israel, and 2 weeks ago we referenced that out of chapter 50 in Genesis. And so it's a fascinating wind down, because now where Joseph was separated from everybody, a couple weeks ago we talked about the reunion that took place when his brothers came down to get food for the famine. Now they're together, and so we get this last glimpse into this family as they are together. And so as we connect the dots, Jacob's 12 sons, which included Joseph and Benjamin, they comprise the nation of Israel that would become Israel. This famine that was under God's sovereign control, God's sovereignty means that he has the right to do whatever he wants. Sovereignty is his right. His providence is how he does it. They go together, but in his sovereignty, he brought this famine across the globe, or across the known world at that time. And then in his providence, he takes Israel down to Egypt, where they would be. And as Exodus begins, we'll see this when we start the next chapter of the Jesus story. But when Exodus begins, we read the words, "There arose a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, nor yet the works which he had done in Israel." And when you forget your history, bad things happen. Joseph, this Israelite, saved the Egyptians. But the new Pharaoh who comes to power says, didn't know him, don't care. Look at all of these foreigners. Let's make them slaves. And doesn't it make you wonder, like as Exodus begins there, God, why would you bring Israel to Egypt so that they could become slaves? Well, that's not for me to know, apparently. But anyway, they spend over 4 centuries, over 400 years in slavery in Egypt. And it is the people who come from this family that's in Egypt here in Genesis 48, these 12 sons of Jacob. It is these people and their descendants who will cross the Red Sea in, chapter 14 and 15 of Exodus. And so let's pick up the story in Genesis 48, verse 1. Here's what we read. "One day not long after this, word came to Joseph, 'Your father is failing rapidly.' And so Joseph went to visit his father, and he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim." So Jacob here is dying. When you're young, you know that people die. You see it happening all the time. But when you're young, you never think it's going to happen to you. And some of you are young right now, and I'm telling you this, and you're like, oh yeah, that's true. And really what's deep-seated in the back of your mind is, I'm never going to get old. And those of us who are older than you, we know that there's going to come a time when your brain's going to say, let's do that. And you're going to say, yeah. And your body's going to say, what are you talking about, Willis? What? Because you can't. There's going to come a time when you are going to be like Jacob, and you're going to know you're dying. Things aren't going to be like they used to be, and that's just a sobering reality of our human experience. So Joseph comes in because Jacob's dying. He takes his 2 sons with him, and in verses 3 and 4, we see the relationship of Jacob and God in action, and then we pick it up in verse number 4 here. "He said to me," God said to Jacob, "I will make you fruitful, and I will multiply your descendants. I'll make you a multitude of nations. I will give this land of Canaan to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. Now I am claiming as my," and so that's what God told him. And now Jacob says to Joseph, "Now I am claiming as my own sons these 2 sons of yours, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born here in the land of Egypt before I arrived. They will be my sons, just as Reuben and Simeon are. But any children born to you in the future will be your own, and they will inherit land within the territories of their brothers, Ephraim and Manasseh." Interesting that Jacob, and we'll see that we'll flesh this out a little more, but Jacob he gives the names in the reverse order. The author tells us that Joseph brought with him his sons Manasseh and Ephraim, and Jacob says, I'm taking your two boys, Ephraim and Manasseh. That's important. So this promise that God gave to Abraham goes to Isaac, then Isaac has Jacob, it's passed on to Jacob, and now Jacob is going to pass on the blessing to Joseph. He is treating Ephraim and Manasseh as his own kids, so there's no tribe of Joseph. In essence, there's Ephraim and Manasseh are both Joseph, but there will, as you read through the scriptures, you'll see from the tribe of Manasseh, the tribe of Ephraim. Those types of things, if their lineage comes from there, they're descendants of Joseph. And this is great for them, and what a blessing for these two kids. Verse 10, Jacob was half blind because of his age, and he could hardly see. And so Joseph brought the boys close to him. And Jacob kissed and embraced them. Then Jacob said to Joseph, I never thought I would see your face again, and now God has let me see your kids too. I mean, this is just so cool. Remember, a couple weeks ago we had said that when the brothers had gone back and said, we've got to take Benjamin with us, or we're all going to starve, we're not going to get food from, it was before Joseph revealed himself to them. Remember that at that time, Jacob said, he's up in Israel, he doesn't know Joseph is alive, and he says, everything is against me. Joseph is gone. He's got another son in captivity, and now he wants to take Benjamin. Everything is against me. And I told you a couple weeks ago, and it's worth repeating here. Those are the moments when you need to pause with your mouth or with your heart. Because in the moment that Jacob believed that everything was against him and life could hardly be worse, the truth was nothing could have been better. His son was alive, and his son was the second most powerful and the most influential person in the world. But it just hadn't come time yet for Jacob to discover that. We always have to pause when we start to feel overcome by what we see in our lives. Are there any grandparents here? If you're a grandparent, slip your hand up. If I said, are there any parents here, you'd be a lot slower. But there's something about grandkids, and I'm sure, Lord willing, I'll discover it. Kids, there are kids. But we've been asking grandparents, since Noel's been engaged and stuff, we've been asking them, about this grandparenting thing. Like, is it true? Oh, it's so true. Everything they said, it's so true, and there's so much more. Grandkids are awesome. And incidentally, physiologically, you see more of yourself not in your children, you see more of yourself in your grandkids than you do your own kids. That's just an interesting physiological thing that I don't fully understand, but it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's part of why we love them so much, right? So there's grandparents here. There's something special about it. And the same is here, true here. Millennia ago, Jacob calls in his grandkids, and here's Jacob. He had held that coat of many colors of Joseph, thought he was dead. His dream had been shattered, the dream of just living in prosperity in Israel and having all of his sons. His sons hated Joseph. They told him that they killed him and all of this stuff. And now here he finds himself. It's got to be a bit surreal for him to be in Egypt after 17 years of being with Joseph. And he says, I can't believe I'm at this moment. I cannot believe I am at this moment. And maybe you've been there. Maybe all of the evidence in your life is saying to you right now today that the dream is over, that'll never happen. That thing won't happen. You won't ever be able to buy that house. You won't ever be able to get that vehicle. You'll never be able to have that kind of marriage. You'll never be able to have that kind of relationship. You'll never be able to have that kind of job. Maybe everything on the outside is pointing in that direction, and you're just resigning yourself to it. I would warn you to not be resigned to such things unless God somehow supernaturally communicates it to you, like he did to the Apostle Paul. Stop praying about this. I'm not going to do it. My grace is sufficient. And Paul moved on. But don't give up on those dreams that you have in your life. So Joseph gets his boys ready for this blessing, verse 13. Then he positioned the boys in front of Jacob. with his right hand, Joseph's right hand, he directs Ephraim toward Jacob, who would be facing this way, toward Jacob's left hand, and with his left hand, he put Manasseh at Jacob's right hand. That's on purpose. We talked last week in our Father's Day message about the parable of the two sons. A man had two sons, the older and the younger. The younger comes and says, "Give me my stuff." The older child always got more of the inheritance. Always. That's the tradition. That's the way it happened. That's the way that it functions in these ancient Middle Eastern countries and societies. And so, this is what is happening. Joseph brings Ephraim and Manasseh so that they come right in front of almost blind Jacob, so that Jacob can extend his hands to Manasseh and to Ephraim. This is a huge moment. Look at verse 14. But Jacob crossed his arms as he reached out to lay his hands on the boys' heads. He put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, though he was the younger boy, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, though he was firstborn. What are you doing, you blind old coot? I brought them to you. What are you doing? This is what Joseph is saying. You can't cross your arms. That's breaking the rules. You can't do that. You remember in the New Testament, when Jesus proclaimed that salvation was not only for Jews, were the Jews bothered by that? Because they were God's chosen race, and how dare anybody else think that they should receive his blessing? It's the Jesus story. You see, God will sometimes he'll change the way he's doing things. He won't compromise his character. He won't compromise truth. His mission will never change, but his methods will. You always marry the mission and you date the method. You date the model. I like that. That's what you do. The mission's never going to change, but how you carry out the mission, that might change. That's what's happening here. This is not what Joseph had planned. Verse 17. But Joseph was upset. I think this is the only time that we ever read those words about Joseph. He was upset when he saw his father placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, and so Joseph lifted it to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's. No, my father, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused. I know, my son, I know, he replied. Manasseh will also become a great people, but his younger brother will become even greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations. There is tension right here in this moment. Joseph is upset with his dad because his dad is giving the greater blessing to the younger son. And that's not the way you do it when you're a Hebrew. Again, in the New Testament, as the early church is developing, why was the Apostle Peter upset that Gentiles, people who weren't Jews, should have access to God's salvation? Because they weren't Jews. They didn't get that blessing, and God said, yes, they do. Yes, they do. And that's what Jacob is telling Joseph here. It's not that Manasseh received no blessing. It's that Ephraim got the blessing of the firstborn. And so here we have a shakeup. There's changing rules. There's changing ways. It's a big shakeup. What do we do when there's a shakeup in our life? What do we do when there's a shakeup in the world? This applies to what we are viewing and reading with regards to Iran over the last 9 or 10 days. What we're going to talk about today. It applies on that global scale. It applies very specifically to every event in your life and mine. This is one of those messages. Number one, what do we do when there's a shakeup? Number one, ask directions. Men, this is going to be hard for you. Right? Driving through town. Well, we got smartphones now in our cars. Navigational stuff is a lot better than it used to be. So we don't have to ask directions. Oh, yeah, we do. We got to ask Siri. We got to ask the car. Where to go? Yeah, take me there. But we used to have to stop in the neighborhood. I remember with my grandma and my aunt, they had taken my brother and I over to Oregon on a trip. We're driving in the blue, two-tone blue Ford Bronco 2. And my aunt, who's driving in Portland, she's from Fairfield, so this doesn't work out real well. And I'm probably 9. My brother's 11 probably. And we end up in Portland, in downtown Portland. We were the only white people within 3 miles. I could feel it as a little boy. This is not good. What are we going to do? Stop and run? Hey, can you tell us how to get back to the freeway? Now, my grandma might have done that, but I think my aunt locked the windows so that she couldn't. And we ended up getting our way out of there. But sometimes you got to ask directions. In 2001, we were still pastoring in Casper, and in the summer of 2001, we were driving across South Dakota to get from Casper to Breckenridge, Minnesota. You basically have to stair-step your way on a bunch of 2-lane roads, highways, up through South Dakota, so that you can get over there to Minnesota. And that's the way that we chose to handle it. Well, on that night, it became pitch black. We're driving along. The wind is howling. There's these flashes of lightning. We're seeing stuff blowing around that shouldn't have been blowing around. We're in South Dakota. We've never driven on these roads, and we haven't, we probably did one more time after that, and that was when we left Casper. But we're stair-stepping our way across, and we come to this place where there's a detour. They got the thing, and you got to turn off the road. Now we're on gravel roads, and I got tumbleweeds blowing everywhere. I've got my wife with me. Noelle, of course, wasn't born yet, and I'm just thinking to myself, huh. And how many of you know when you get detoured in the dark, it feels a lot longer than it actually is? I mean, especially when you're in an unknown place, you're like, how far is this? You're watching the odometer, and it's like, oh my goodness. Well, we end up having to follow these detour signs around all this construction to get back to where we were so that we could eventually end up in Aberdeen, South Dakota for the night. We wake up the next morning to the news that there was a tornado in the very area that we were driving through. We walked out to our car, and one side of it was brown and the other side was maroon. Guess which way the wind was blowing? It was just one of those kind of storms. But it reminds me of what we're talking about here with Joseph. What do you do when all of a sudden there's a detour in the road? There's a detour in the path. What are you supposed to do? You got to ask directions. And sometimes one of the ways God will give you directions is with detours. And it might be dark, and the wind might be howling, and branches might be flying across, and you might see the neighbor's cat or somebody's cat blowing. Don't worry about it. If it's a dog, stop the car and do everything you can to save his life. Right? And you might be fighting your way through that detour, hoping to God that the storm will pass, hoping to God that the moonlight will show you the way, but it's just dark, and all you've got is keep going this way, keep going this way. Sometimes that's how God will give you directions. But what's more important is that you and I humble ourselves and we say, God, I don't know what to do. I need help. What do I do? Which way do I go? Which way do I go? God will sometimes change things up, and sometimes God answers prayers in ways that we don't expect. How many of you know that? Yeah. Think about the dreams in your life that are yet to be unfulfilled. The path. I'm going to think about mine. The path that I had for those to be fulfilled. And where I am right now. There's a different path. And this last week, I've just been reminded. Ken, you're trying to figure some things out on your own here. That's not God, and that's not good. Humble yourself and ask. You're not a lesser person because you need to ask for directions. You're a stronger person when you do ask for directions. So ask directions. Number 2, you got to let go. Don't make me sing the song, but I will if you need the help of the Holy Spirit throughout this day. Joseph is ticked. He says, I'm upset. He's upset. What, Dad, why are you crossing your arms? You can't do the blessing that way. Manasseh gets the blessing of the firstborn. Ephraim gets the blessing of the secondborn. And Jacob said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it different. Joseph is ticked. And again, we don't see that. This might be the only time that we see him this upset in his entire life from Genesis 37 through Genesis 50. But notice the difference in Joseph from where he had been to where he is now. Joseph, to our knowledge, he never got so upset that we hear about it from the author when things were not in his control. When he was a prisoner, when he was a slave, when he was falsely accused, when he told dreams and people forgot about him, I'm sure those things made him upset. But he never lost it. Now Joseph is the second most powerful man on the planet, and he is in control. He's the one who brought his family and saved them, brought them down to Egypt. He's had some years now, at least 17 years, more than 20 probably, of being in control, and now his dad says, you aren't in control. And how you respond when you are no longer in control is a key for the direction in your life. Some of us like to be in control. Our personalities are bent that way. Our orientation in life is bent that way. That is a gift from God. The world needs that gift within us. But there are times when God will shake things up and say, you're not in control. And what I need you to do is ask directions and let go. And friends, I cannot tell you how hard this is. Some of you know. It's very, very difficult. In Isaiah chapter 43, the prophet Isaiah is reminding the people of how God led the Israelites through the wilderness. And so this is post-Exodus and wilderness wanderings and all that. Isaiah 43:18. But forget all that. It's nothing compared to what I'm going to do. For I am about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland. God reminded Israel of his greatness as they wandered through the promised land. But then he tells them, through the prophet Isaiah, I'm going to do things different next time. I'm going to do things different. I'm going to do something new. God says, don't dwell on the past because I'm still at work. I'm still at work. God is still working in your life. Do you see it? Do I see it? Do I see how God is working in my life? God is still working in this region to reach people. It may not look like how we thought it would look. It may not look like the way we prayed for it to happen. But here we are. And just because everything we see is not the way we wanted it or the way that we planned, doesn't mean that God is not working. We ask directions and we let it go. When things don't go according to our plans, that's when our face is pushed up against our phone, like I said a few weeks ago. Now read that text. Well, I can't. Yeah, you got to get perspective. But it's times like this with Joseph, when he had become used to being in control, and now he's out of control, or situations are out of his control, and he can't call the shots. Now what? Joseph did the right thing. He didn't force his way. He let it go. And he said, okay, I'll trust what God is doing. I trusted him in the prison. I trusted him as a slave. I trusted him when my brother sold me. I trusted him when I was left for dead. I trusted him when I was falsely accused. I will trust him again now. Ask directions, let go, and number 3, trust God. Trust what God is doing. These are opportunities for us to trust God. Joseph was expecting the tradition of the time to take place. Wasn't that the problem that the Pharisees had with Jesus? By the way, you got to do further study on the religious sects, S-E-C-T-S, of Israel. Jesus had way more in common with the Pharisees than he had differences with them. You and I, if we'd lived in the first century, we probably would have been Pharisees. Common people, without money, without power, who loved God, who revered His Word. So be careful of how hard of a time you give the Pharisees when you always see Jesus confronting them. But Jesus came, and what was their problem? This isn't the way we do things. And they dug their heels in. They didn't let go. They didn't trust God. Joseph let go, and he trusted God. Look at what Isaiah said in chapter 55. My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. God knows what He is doing. My job and your job is to see where He's moving and to move with Him. And so ask yourself today, is that the picture of my life? Or am I trying to tell God, come with me, come with me? There's two kinds of people that we meet on the trail when they have dogs. There's the kind that leash their dogs, that are in control of their dogs. And there are those who have unleashed dogs who get to do whatever they want. Americans love to be unleashed. Our culture, we don't want to trust God. We want to trust ourselves. We want to trust that that dog that's off the leash is not going to nip at us and bite us. But you see, the dog that's on the leash, he's got a leash. He has to yield to the one with the leash. That's trust. That's trust. Some of you got a choker chain on it. Yeah. You know, if you'll just stop trying to do things on your own and be in control, you get some relief. Because trusting God will bring peace to your soul. What did Jesus say? What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but he loses his soul? What good is it if I get my way, if I'm always in control, if I don't trust God? And that's what Isaiah was saying. We've seen it all through the Jesus story and through the life of Joseph. You see, Jacob gives the greater blessing to Ephraim, whose name means fruitful. And he gives the lesser blessing to Manasseh, whose name means forget the past. And so many times we want to remember the past. And God says, let it go, because I want you to be fruitful. I don't want you living in the past. I'm doing a new thing. Trust me and see. And we can be like this. Joseph tried to force his way. He tries to move Jacob's hands. And what does Jacob say? No, that's not the way I'm going to do it. We can be like that. Make our own rules. We see it all around us. Have sex before you're married. That's making up your own rules. Friday's drunk day. That's making up your own rules. Tell a little lie here and there. That's making up your own rules. Then pretty soon we come to a place where we wonder why God isn't blessing us and why we're not fruitful. And we fail to look at how we've tried to keep control. We're not yielded to God and His truth. The providence of God trumps the traditions of men. And that's what Jacob was demonstrating to Joseph here. You can think about the global stuff that's going on with Iran and the Middle East. What's going on? I don't know, but God does. And here in America, our job is not to, in central Montana, our job is not to know everything that's happening and why it's happening, the way it's happening, and to trust the news sources. We are supposed to not change a lick. We are supposed to remain obedient to the Lord as we see what He's doing in central Montana and we follow His lead. The Son of Man came to seek and save those who were lost in the Middle East and here in central Montana. When change forces your face against the canvas that God is painting of your life, you need to pause and remember that God's ways are better than yours. And it's okay to just chill and relax. Political scheming is all in the hands of God. Nobody's doing anything that's taking God by surprise. Nobody. Maybe today you need to respond. I'm going to ask you to grab that Connect card in the seat back of the chair in front of you. If you've already started to fill one out, you can just turn it over to the back side. Right there at the top, it says My Response. I know I need to respond to what I've heard today. You can just mark that box. You can put your name on it or not, but I would ask you as you leave today, if you just drop this into the Connect boxes on your way out today, we want to be praying for you this week. Maybe today you're just struggling with control and you know you need to trust God and let it go. And that's how you need to respond. I can't do that for you. But that is something that God can help you do. That's why He's spoken to you about that. Maybe today you want to learn more about God's ways in your life. Maybe you want to experience His peace that passes understanding. Because trust me, friends, being in control, it's exhausting to your life. It's exhausting. Trying to control people and, kids, all that kind of stuff. That's crazy. I love our children's ministry. It's like herding cats. Imagine how God feels with 7 billion of us. And maybe that's how you need to respond today. Maybe you need to get better at just obeying God when He speaks to you. I don't know. But what I do hope is that we will all respond like Joseph when we're confronted with a shakeup, with a detour, with new directions, with a new way, with a new method, with a change in our life, in our church family, whatever it might be. That we will learn to ask God what He's doing. We'll ask His directions. We'll let it go and we'll trust Him. That's the path that we all need to be on. If you need to respond today again, I'll just encourage you. First of all, fill out that Connect card so that you can have a group of people, our prayer team, this week praying with you about what God is speaking to your heart this morning. But secondly, take action with what He's saying. Because you'll never be transformed if you don't act on what God has said. That's how change happens. That's how transformation happens. Will you stand with me this morning? Jesus, we bow our hearts before You before we leave this place today. And God, for some of us, there are some shakeups that are happening. And Lord, may we respond like Joseph by asking directions, letting it go, and trusting You. So hard, not always easy. And Lord, our flesh fights against us. Our sinful nature fights against us, trusting You. And yet, God, we recognize how desperately we need to trust You if we're going to walk in the blessing of fruitfulness, the blessing of Ephraim. So God, today as we go from this place, I pray that blessing, the blessing of the right hand of Jacob, who put his hand on Ephraim's head. Ephraim, who is fruitful. God, I pray that blessing over every household represented here today. May we trust You. May we follow your directions. May we know you. May we trust you. God, may we let it go when we need to let it go. And may we do our part faithfully and diligently as you instruct us and teach us in the ways in which we should go. We thank you that you guide us with your hand upon us. So teach us not to be like the horse and mule that need bit and bridle, but teach us to be sensitive to your leading and your direction. We give you thanks for all of these things. In the name of Jesus, amen. Amen. Trust God in the shakeup of your own life this week. God bless you as you go today.